Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about The Sensorites by Peter R. Newman. Before I start, I just want to say this DVD is fantastic. There's a brilliant documentary on it about Peter R. Newman and just exactly who was he. Because before this DVD came out, this guy was pretty much a mystery. Nobody really knew who he was. We knew that he wrote this story and he wrote one Hammer film, but we didn't really know anything about him until the guy made a documentary for this DVD. So just highly recommend that. But anyway, back into the actual story itself. Now, this story has a bit of a reputation for not being so good, but does it really deserve the hate? I'm going to delve deep into this and to see what lies within the story. What I'm going to do this time, I'm going to do something a little bit different to see if I can explain it a bit better. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go a little bit into detail about the story, and then I'm going to break it down. Okay? So the Sensorite begins with the Doctor and his crew landing on a ship, and these guys, they're being controlled by these three crew members. They're being controlled by the Sensorites, these creatures that can control people's minds. However, they're scared of darkness and they're scared of loud noises, and there's a lot of creepy elements to it. And then what happens then is that after a bit of beating, the Doctor and their crew discover that they're just protective of their planet, because before they had humans come before, and something happened with them, and now there's a disease that's going onto the planet of the Sensphere, the home of the Sensorites. And the Doctor, Susan and Ian go onto the planet to try and sort out, because one of them's taken one of the TARDIS locks and they need to get it back, and to sort out the arrangement to free the rest of the crew that the TARDIS landed in. So they meet up with three Sensorite leaders, but one of them really doesn't trust the human race, thinking that they're just evil, that they're trying to just destroy Sensorite society. So Ian drinks one of the tap waters of the Sensorites, and he gets desperately ill, and the Doctor tries to find a remedy for it, whilst one of the Sensorites is plotting against them. However, the main leader, the First Elder, trusts the humans and wants to help as much as he can, but because of the other Sensorites distrusting of humans, they have to work around that. So later on they find a cure, and the Doctor tries to find out what is going on. However, the other Sensorite takes a ploy by kidnapping one of the crew members, and tries to make a plot that it looks like the humans are trying to sabotage the Sensorite sphere. Now, we're going to get to the end of it, so this is a spoiler warning. So it turns out that when the Doctor goes into the aqueducts to find out what's the matter with the water, it turns out that three human survivors have been poisoning the Sensorite, believing that they can win a war against the Sensorites and take all of their rich minerals from the planet for themselves. And the Doctor comes up with a plan to pretend that they've won the war and that the planet is theirs, only to be tricked and lead them into the Sensorites. So that's the main plot. Doesn't sound too bad, doesn't it? Now, this story is clearly a political statement. Now, Peter R. Newman actually based this on his time during World War II, when he was in a Japanese camp. And you can clearly see the influence here. There's a lot of distrust between our two groups of humans and Sensorites. One of the Sensorite leader is actually trustful of humans, but one of them really isn't, and is really xenophobic and doesn't trust anyone. And then we've got our human characters. The first three that we meet, they have like a distrust, but they're not too bad. They can trust them if being treated properly. And our TARDIS crew are very eye-opened to the idea of the Sensorites being goods. However, at the end, the human characters, the ones that they find in the aqueduct, they don't trust the Sensorites at all and believe that they are these evil aliens that just want to keep the minerals for themselves. So there's a big political statement, and that's not a problem. Sci-fi has always been political, and it's a great message to get out that xenophobic ideologies is just bad. However, the problem is that when you have an interesting idea like this, you need to follow it up with interesting characters. And I'm afraid that the Sensorites, anyway, the main Sensorite aliens, aren't that interesting. Now, we have the two groups of humans. The first group of humans that we meet at the start are very well handled. I especially love the actor who plays the crazy one, John, the member of the crew. He's so into the role that I genuinely believe that they got a crazy person, just put him on set and let him do whatever he wants to do. The guy was just that good, and he kind of stole the show in the first few episodes. You've got this female character who is his fiancée, and she is really disheartened by the fact that the Sensorites have basically made this guy crazy because they've been controlling his mind. That's all well and good, and there's also a third crew member, but he doesn't get a lot to do, so we're not going to talk about him. However, the two interesting characters that we do have here, they only get big plot elements in the first 2 episodes. And that's a problem, because this is a 6-part story. Yes, a 6-part story. When we go to the planet, the two characters, the John, the crazy one, and the woman, they come onto the planet as well. However, Barbara stays on the ship, and we don't see her for 2 episodes. Now, this was done so that Jacqueline Hill can have a holiday, so I completely understand. Seeing as she was one of the best companions of the original run of the show, it was kind of sad to see that she was put to the sideline in this story. And Ian gets sidelined to this episode as well, because in a few episodes he is fallen ill thanks to the poison, and then because of that, he doesn't get a lot to do. So it's mainly a Doctor and Susan focused story. The Doctor here, played by William Hartnell, is fantastic. He gets some great lines, especially at the start before they leave the TARDIS. And you've got that famous line where he says, it all started out in a mild curiosity in a junkyard, and now it's become quite a rich spirit of adventure, don't you think? That is just a classic line, and it comes from the first episode of this. So, the Doctor seems a lot more cheerful than he does in previous stories, and you can see him warming up a lot to Barbara and Ian in these couple of episodes. Susan gets a lot to do in this, personality-wise. She has... it's strange, because she seems to be the only one telepathic, and she can communicate with the Sensorites more than the others, which I found very strange. I don't know if they were trying to tease up like a little mystery with Susan. It seemed like they were going that way. Obviously nothing came of it in the end, but it was just a really nice gesture, that thing. And also as well, she gets like a little story arc, where at the start she tries to make her own decisions and she gets shouted at, and she feels like she's been treated like a child. And that is very great character development for Susan, because it's true, she does get treated as a child a lot, and she does, and in this story she tries to mature, and she tries to make her own decisions. However, I think it's only really strong in the first few episodes, but then later on she just gets sidelines, and the storyline goes nowhere in this story. Now, I was talking about earlier about the 3 other human characters that they find in the aqueduct. As I said before, the political angle is nothing new, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, what was the problem with here is that this element of these characters who poisoned the Sensorites comes in at the very last episode of a 6-part story. meaning that these characters are very rushed. They're more caricatures of people who have been trapped in these aqueducts and gone crazy. These characters seem more like they're caricatures of what they should be, because they've only get the only one episode to develop their characters. I think the actors did a very good job. However, like I said, they don't get a lot to do, and the main captain isn't that interesting enough to hold the last episode. So in between these two, the bit in the ship and the bit at the end, you've got this whole conspiracy with one of the evil Sensorites, and it's just not interesting. He's clearly a villain, and there's no real danger feeling to what he does, because our main characters are always one step ahead of him, and it seems like that our heroes could easily overpower any Sensorites. Now, the actual Sensorites themselves, I remember when I first watched this and I thought they were really creepy. However, the more I watch this, the more I realise how silly and stupid they look, especially their feet. Luckily, they don't show their feet a lot. Most of their shots, they're in mid-shot from the waist up, so it doesn't become that distracting. However, when they do show the feet, and it's like these flat circle discs, it's very silly, and it ruins the atmosphere of these terrifying characters. I will say this though, the first two episodes are very well directed by Mervyn Pinfield as well. I don't know much about Mervyn Pinfield, but from what I can tell, he's got a great eye for directing, especially in the dark. The set itself in the ship isn't that new or impressive, but Mervyn does a very great job at shooting in the dark and getting the Sensorites to look threatening, even though the cliffhanger in part 1 is very silly when you see one come out of the window. And yeah, that's the Sensorites. It's a bit ambitious for what it wants to be, and it's a bit too long. I think 6 episodes was pushing it. I think this could have easily been a 5 or even a 4-part story. However, Peter R. Martin does a great job at some of Susan's development, even if it goes a little bit nowhere. William Hartnell is a charming man as always, and I really like the two characters at the start of the story, even if their characters do get sidelined. A lot of characters get sidelined in this story. So yeah, this is probably the weakest story so far in this marathon. However, I still think it's a very good watch, and I think you should do try it if you're interested in it. Just don't expect anything amazing. So there you go, that's the Sensorites. So join me next time when we go back into Big Finish audio dramas and see what happens when the Doctor, at the end of this story, tries to get Ian and Barbara back to Earth as he tries to prove them wrong that he can fly the ship. Strange that a classic story can lead into a Big Finish story. But how will that go? Let's find out in the next episode of the Doctor Who Marathon. I'll see you then.